Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1238, 1238, Thursday, September the 3rd, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so we did have some fairly major breaking news yesterday with the Spygate story. Of course, it was the release of the Joseph Mifsud 302. So we've been wondering, it was just maybe last week that I've been on the Mifsud kick now for like a week. And about this time last week, I said, there's got to be a 302 from Misfit, and we need to see that. So, I don't know, maybe Attorney General Barr was watching my video. Now, I'm not really sure who released this. I'm not sure if it came from the ODNI or if it came from Barr. I'm not really sure. So, I'm not sure who released it, but I'm glad they did. But it's extraordinary when you look at this 302. I'm sure most of you have looked at it by now. When I first read it, I thought, well, where's the rest of it? I'm like scrolling down, scrolling and looking for the rest of it because I'm thinking, this can't be it. There's got to be more. That's it. And that tells you a lot. Another thing that I thought was pretty interesting is at the very beginning of it, they literally give you, they say, Misfit, whose phone number is such and such and his address is such and such. And of course they got his email, because he had emailed the FBI with some information. So they had his name, his phone number, and his email. And let's just go ahead and go through some of the notes I took from reading this. And once I go through these notes, then we'll kind of talk about that a little bit. So keep in mind, of course, Mifsud, I'm sure most of you know, but he is the guy who dropped the ticking time bomb on Papagolopoulos in London. On their second meeting, he tells Papagolopoulos that the Russians have some sort of dirt on Hillary Clinton. And that's what he said, some sort of dirt on Hillary Clinton. Said nothing about emails, nothing about lost emails or deleted emails or WikiLeaks emails, said nothing about emails at all. Just that the Russians had some damaging information on Hillary Clinton. Now, of course, as you will see in the 302, if you haven't read it, Mifsud completely denies this. So let's just go through this, through my notes. They're kind of scattered because they're just notes. And then I'll try to put this together. So, Mifsud says in this 302 that he had no advance knowledge of Russia having the DNC emails and did not make any offer to Papagolopoulos, and he suggests that Papagolopoulos must have been mistaken. Now, what's interesting about this is that Papagolopoulos says that he remembers the conversation with Alexander down the hatch Downer very well. It wasn't a very friendly conversation. It wasn't a very long conversation. And he does not remember even talking about emails, hacking, the campaign, or anything else having to do with, hacked emails or anything like that. But yet Downer passes this information along. It makes its way to the FBI, and Downer himself, in his interviews, says that he said nothing about emails. That what he says he related to the U.S. government through the embassy in London, which made its way to the FBI, is that Papagolopoulos told him that the Russians have some damaging information on Hillary Clinton. He said nothing about emails either. Keep that in mind. So, if we go back to the Mueller report describes Mifsud is this person having Russian connections. And in order to establish this narrative that a member of the Trump campaign, Papagolopoulos, met with this shady Russian-connected individual, and this shady connected Russian individual, Mifsud, told Papagolopoulos about the Russians having Hillary's emails, when in fact Mifsud denies saying anything, but Papagolopoulos says he never said anything about emails. Downer says he never said anything about emails, but that is the narrative somehow turned into emails. But Mueller plays up in the Mueller report. They paint Mifsud, and it's what they have to do to make the narrative work, to make it sound like Papagolopoulos was, in this shady deal, meeting with some Russian-connected spy sort of guy who was connected to the Kremlin, and that they were, talking about some sleazy deal where maybe Papagolopoulos is going to get some information from Mifsud about Russians, and maybe there was some sort of a deal in the works for Mifsud to be the intermediary between Papagolopoulos and the Russians to arrange for them to get this dirt that the Russians have on Hillary and all this sort of thing. That is the narrative. That's the picture they had to paint to sell the lie, to get the investigation going, because I knew the dossier was bullshit. So they had to use the Papagolopoulos frame-up. But just remember, in the Mueller report, as well as Comey testifying under oath, also referenced Mifsud as being some sort of a Russian agent. That is the narrative from Uncle Bob the Executioner and from Comey, the FBI, that Mifsud was some sort of a Kremlin-connected Russian agent. That is the narrative that they had to sell. But if you look at the 302 and you read it, it's just extraordinary. If in fact the FBI actually believed that they were talking to this Kremlin-connected Russian agent, the guy who drops this information on Papagolopoulos, then certainly if you're the FBI, you would have some serious questions for Mifsud. And you wouldn't be having this conversation in a hotel lobby. You would take him down to the local FBI headquarters and you would grill him for hours and hours about what connections he may have to Russians, and all this sort of thing, and what he was doing, meeting with Papagolopoulos, and you would have a lot of questions. You would be digging in to Mifsud. But if you read that 302, it's pretty obvious that they had no interest whatsoever. And even when Mifsud tells them, Papagolopoulos, I don't know, he must be confused. I didn't say anything about emails or hacking or anything like that, so I don't know what he was talking about. We were talking about some cybersecurity things, so maybe he just got confused. Now, clearly the FBI believed that Mifsud was lying to them, right? Because there were 3 lies that Mifsud told them in that interview. If you read the Mueller report and you listen to Comey's testimony, they're on record that Mifsud is some sort of a Russian-connected agent. He's telling the FBI that he did not do what they're suggesting he did. And keep in mind, they're now interviewing Mifsud 7 months after they've opened the investigation, based on what Mifsud allegedly told Papagolopoulos, who allegedly told Downer, and what Downer passed through to the FBI. So if the FBI is interviewing Mifsud, and they've already determined that he is a Russian agent of some sort, and he sits there and tells the FBI that no, that's not true, I'm not a Russian agent or whatever. They didn't even ask him that. They just basically asked him about what he told Papagolopoulos, and he denied it. Now, at this point, the FBI's got a choice to make. They have to say, okay, well, either he's telling me the truth, and he didn't tell Papagolopoulos that, which means 7 months ago we opened up an investigation based on a lie, or Mifsud did tell Papagolopoulos that, and he's lying to us. Now, the fact that they went with the narrative that Mifsud is a Russian agent and that Papagolopoulos told Halper or told Downer, and Downer passed it on to the U.S. government, that tells you, in fact that it's in the Mueller report, and Comey said so himself, that Mifsud was some sort of a Russian agent of some kind. That means that they had to, at that point, when they're interviewing Mifsud, and he tells them that that's not true, they should have arrested him. Because clearly they've already made the decision that he did give this information to Papagolopoulos. At that point, he's lying right to the faces of the FBI agents that are interviewing him there. They should have arrested him on the spot. They should have said, well, I'm sorry, Mr. Mifsud, but we have other evidence, and we believe that, in fact, you did, and you've just lied to us. Put your hands behind your back. Keep that in mind. The FBI also, and there's another thing, as you're reading through the 302, you find this as well, that the FBI had said that Papagolopoulos lied about if he was with the Trump campaign at the time he met with Mifsud, and that impeded their ability to question Mifsud, and that hindered their investigation. And that's another reason that they used to go after Papagolopoulos. Oh, he messed up our investigation because he lied to us about whether or not he was in the Trump campaign at the time he talked to Mifsud. But Mifsud himself, in the 302, you can see it right there, Mifsud himself tells the FBI that Papagolopoulos was with the Trump campaign when they first met at Link Campus in Rome. So certainly that can't be true, what the FBI is saying. It could have hindered their investigation because Mifsud himself is telling them that, in fact, Papagolopoulos was working for the Trump campaign. Remember what happens. Papagolopoulos is over there at the London Center for International Law. He gets brought onto the Trump campaign. He goes and tells his superiors there, hey, guess what? I'll be leaving because I'm going to work on the Trump campaign. And they say, oh, before you go, you absolutely have to go to this place in Italy and meet this guy because he's going to hook you up with all kinds of important people that you'll want to make connections with while you're working on the Trump campaign. And of course, it was this woman, Avinder Sambai, who of course has connections to Uncle Bob the Executioner. She's close personal friends with Bruce and Nellie Orr, dined with them in the U.S. back in 2016. So this whole narrative that Papagolopoulos fouled up their investigation because he didn't, advise that he was in the Trump campaign is completely false. Mifsud tells the FBI, oh yeah, he was working, had just, began working on the Trump campaign at the time when we first met at Link University in Italy. Or Link Campus, they call it. And here's another thing that, again, this is why we know this is all a big lie, basically. Mifsud was in D.C. On that day, February the 10th of 2017, because the State Department flew him there because he was going to be one of the speakers. He was going to be giving a speech at this conference which was sponsored by the U.S. State Department. And Mifsud was involved with one of the organizations that the State Department uses when they have these types of events. And so it was the State Department who flew Mifsud to the U.S., to D.C., to be a part of this function where he's going to give a speech. Keep that in mind. The U.S. government is the State Department who brought Mifsud to D.C. And, of course, they interviewed him there in his hotel on February 10th, 2017. Now, you'll notice after reading the 302 that the FBI never took any investigative steps after interviewing Mifsud, and he lies to them 3 times, and they never take any investigative steps to determine how and where Mifsud obtained the information that the FBI claims that he gave Papagolopoulos, that the Russians had dirt on the rotten Reverend Clinton or on the anything having to do with the DNC emails. So they interview Mifsud. He lies to them 3 times, especially on the major point of whether or not he told Papagolopoulos about the Russians having damaging information on the Rotten Reverend. But after that, not only do they not arrest him or take him down to main headquarters FBI and grill him further, or grill him the next day, they never investigate him again. They never investigate to even try to find out exactly who, how, where, and when he would have come into this information. Just as if they're completely disinterested or not interested. Here's the guy who is the very key player that sets off Operation Crossfire Hurricane, according to the FBI. Of course, we know that's a lie, but that's the narrative. We're working from their narrative. Their narrative is that Mifsud is some sort of Russian agent. He drops this information on Papagolopoulos. Papagolopoulos then mentions it to Downer. Downer passes it along through the embassy in London, and it works its way through to the FBI. This leads up to the FBI opening Crossfire Hurricane, July 31st, 2016. That's the official story. If that's true, then why does the FBI wait 7 months to interview Mifsud? And why, once they interview Mifsud and he lies to them 3 times, do they do nothing? And after that interview, why do they never investigate? Because it seems to me that would be the most important thing if you're in counterintelligence in the FBI and you've got the guy who dropped the ticking time bomb on Papagolopoulos, this really important information that the Russians have, damaging information on the Rotten Reverend Clinton. You want to find out from Mifsud, you want to grill this guy and find out where he heard about that. Who told him that? How did he come about getting this information? Is he working for a Russian government official? Is this someone who leaked it from the Russian government? Does the Russian government know that Mifsud has this information? Was this someone in an official capacity purposely giving Mifsud this information? Was it some Russian government person or intelligence person wanting to use Mifsud to work with Papagolopoulos, to work with the Trump campaign? Or was it just some outside private individual who maybe knows some people and someone leaked something to him? Was he some kind of a journalist? I mean, you would have a million questions about how Mifsud would come into this information. Yet when you read the 302, you can see that there's a complete lack of curiosity at all. And it's not because they were just, doing an initial interview and just kind of limiting to that, and that they would follow up later, because there was no follow up later. There was no follow up at all. None at all. He just let him walk and never pressed him or even asked him. And Mifsud says, no, it's not true. I didn't tell Papagolopoulos anything about Russians having dirt on Hillary. I don't know where he got that. He, must have misunderstood, something or whatever. Okay, so the complete lack of curiosity by the FBI. I mean, here's the guy that they should have been digging into. If they wanted to launch an investigation, get FISA warrants, spy on people, it would have been Mifsud. That's the guy you would have gotten the FISA on. That's the guy you want to listen to and follow and track and put informants into. That's the guy that you would focus all your energy on. Because this guy is telling Papagolopoulos that the Russians have, Hillary, dirt on Hillary, although, again, the official narrative is they blend the emails into it and try to make it sound like he knew in advance that WikiLeaks was going to release these emails. That's how they try to tie this all together. But none of it makes any sense. And when you read the 302, you realize that they weren't really, it wasn't a serious Q&A with Mifsud. It wasn't serious. It was, only if you were the most incompetent FBI agents on the planet would that be an acceptable, excuse for an interview of a potentially heavy suspect. I mean, this is a key player. This is a guy who according to what you are saying in the FBI, was some kind of a Russian agent. I mean, you've just found yourself in an interview with a so-called Russian agent. I mean, you're not just going to, give this guy a little softball interview and then turn him loose after he lies to you 3 times and never investigate anything further, especially if that's what the entire investigation is about, is Russian interference in the election. Well, here you got the very guy that you're saying, according to your narrative, is some kind of a Russian agent, that's some sort of an intermediary that's trying to work out some sort of a deal with Papagolopoulos and the Trump campaign to somehow get damaging information that the Russians have to get it into the hands of someone, I guess, in the Trump campaign who can use it against Hillary. I mean, this is the narrative they're creating, and they've got the guy. They got the guy, and they show no interest whatsoever in pushing back on him at all, even after he lies to them 3 times. Just lets him walk and never follows up again. It's just not believable, is it? That wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. Instead, they go aggressively after Papagolopoulos. He was just a recipient. He's just the guy that this gets dropped in his lap. Yet they're going to try to get a FISA. It was rejected, so then they had to put the confidential, informants and sources and all this other stuff on him because they couldn't get the FISA. So they should have been going after Mifsud hard. Instead, they just let him walk after lying to them 3 times, and then they dig into Papagolopoulos. I mean, it's pretty obvious what's happening here. Yeah, I mean, they never press Mifsud to find out why he provided information to Papagolopoulos or what Papagolopoulos may have done with the information after he received it. They have no interest. I mean, Mifsud looks at them and says, well, there must be some mistake. Papagolopoulos must have misunderstood me. At that point, the FBI, I mean, they've already 7 months ago established, opened an investigation based on all this. They probably would have looked at him in a real life situation if this were actually a real interview or what have you. If this is a real situation, they'd have looked at him and said, well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Mifsud, that's a problem because we already have pretty solid evidence that you did tell Papagolopoulos that. We believe that you did. We think you're lying to us. So just go ahead and come clean and tell us, who you're working for. Where did you get that information? Why did you drop it on Papagolopoulos? What were you hoping to do? Blah, 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 blah. Or slap the cuffs on him. So we think you just lied to us, and we have evidence that suggests that what you're telling us right now is not true. Let's go on downtown and let's see if we can talk about this. No, none of that. They just allow him to lie to them 3 times and let him walk, and they never follow up on it. That doesn't work. Okay, that's not real. That's not how things work. That's how things happen. So clearly, again, now this, of course, bleeds itself into, because several months after this interview, we get the Mueller investigation. Mueller would know all this. If you look in the Mueller report clearly says that describes Mifsud is some kind of, Russian agent. They describe him as having close associations with Russians, and they're signaling it to the Putin or the Kremlin or what have you, and they're making him out to look like some sort of a Russian agent. So clearly, according to the Mueller report, the Mueller team believed that Mifsud did give Papagolopoulos the information because it's in the report. That that's what he did. That's what they say in the Mueller report. They don't say maybe. They say, in fact, that Mifsud did give Papagolopoulos this information. So clearly they believe Papagolopoulos and what he told the FBI. They believe Papagolopoulos, not Mifsud. It's also in the Carter Page FISA application. It's in the, not the Carter Page FISA application. It's in the Mueller report, and it's in the charging statement against Papagolopoulos. So they're going hard on this narrative of Mifsud being a Russian agent, despite the fact that just months earlier, and Mueller's team has got the FBI 302 from Mifsud, where Mifsud says, no, I didn't tell Papagolopoulos that. Yet the Mueller team goes ahead with the official narrative anyway, despite the fact that Mifsud denies it. So they never really prove it. They just go with it. But it's like they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to say, yeah, we believe that Mifsud did drop this information on Papagolopoulos. But the fact that he lied to us 3 times about it, that's okay. And the fact that he was this, important person in all of this, dropped this stuff on Papagolopoulos, maybe we should go interview him. Nah, Mueller team never attempted, as far as we know, never even attempted to interview Mifsud. And the FBI certainly didn't do a follow-up, even after he lied to them. They just go ahead with the narrative that he's a Russian asset of some sort, involved in some, shady behavior. Yet they do no investigation of him, really. They just, it's unbelievable. Mifsud denies it, but they go ahead and put it in the report anyway and run with it. It defies logic and reason. So what this tells us is that not only was the FBI lying, but the Mueller, again, we caught Mueller in another lie here, because clearly the Mueller team saw the 302. They knew about the 302. They clearly saw the 302. They know that Mifsud had denied doing what he's accused of doing. Yet they go ahead and lie to the court anyway, and say Mifsud was some sort of a Russian agent giving Papagolopoulos this information, despite the fact that Mifsud has denied it. And if Mifsud has denied it, then that means he didn't plead. He's not pleading. He's not saying, yeah, you're right, you caught me. I gave this information to Papagolopoulos. No, he says just the opposite. Which means now they need to investigate to find out who's telling the truth. Is Mifsud telling the truth or not? You would need to do a follow-up investigation to get some evidence to try to find this out. But they never do. They just take what Mifsud says. Oh yeah, he says he didn't do it. That's okay. We think he did. And he lied to us about it. Let's go ahead and put it in the report anyway. Despite the fact that we have no evidence, he didn't plead guilty to it, but yet we have no evidence other than Papagolopoulos, who we're in the process of prosecuting for lying. This thing is so messed up. If you go back to remember the hearings when Jim Jordan had Mueller sitting there right in front of him, and Jim Jordan lays this whole thing out, what I'm talking about now, and he tells, Mueller, look, he lied to you 3 times. He's the guy that started this whole thing. And you don't arrest him. You don't charge him with lying. Charge everybody else with lying. Why not? And Mueller's response is, well, I can't get into that. He can't get into that. At which point, Jordan asks him a couple other follow-up questions, and he says, I just can't get into that. Can't get into that. Can't get into that. At which point Jordan says, yeah, there's a lot of things you can't get into. So, what does this all tell us? Well, it tells us that there's a lot of people lying here. Now, I believe that Papagolopoulos is telling the truth. I believe that Mifsud is lying. And I believe that Mifsud is just one of the Oconus lures that they're trying to cover for. Just like Halper and just like Downer. I believe when they're referring to the Oconus lures, that's what they're referring to. Halper, Downer, and Mifsud. I believe that those were the Oconus lures they were talking about, who were going to run the setup on Papagolopoulos. And they've been caught. Clearly, if this would have been a normal FBI investigation following normal procedure, they would have gotten to Mifsud a hell of a lot sooner than 7 months. They would have talked to him before they opened Crossfire Hurricane, not 7 months later. And they would have tried to verify, hey, did you tell Papagolopoulos this? And if he said, yeah, then they would have a bunch of questions for him. Where did you hear that? Did that come from an official source? Somebody leaked that to you, a reporter, a government official? They would dig and dig and dig and try to find out what's going on. And if Mifsud said, no, that's not true, I didn't say that, so Papagolopoulos must be mistaken, at which point they'd say, well, we kind of believe him, and we don't really believe you. I think we need to have a little further talk. At which point, they probably would have pressed him to see if they could get him to come clean. If not, they would have went back and they would have got a FISA on Mifsud. They'd have put confidential informants around Mifsud. They would have been tapping his phones, following him around, setting him up, trying to find out what was going on. And at some point, they probably would have arrested him. I mean, he's the key Russian, asset that's the impetus for everything that they're doing in this Trump-Russia investigation and this Russia interfering in the election investigation. Here is the guy that's clearly saying, yeah, I know the Russians got this dirt. In a normal FBI investigation, Mifsud would have been arrested. Or certainly, at the very least, he would have been questioned very, very hard for hours and hours. What they did to Papagolopoulos is what they did to Papagolopoulos is what they should have did to Mifsud. And anybody with a lick of sense in their head and common sense would realize this. I mean, certainly Barr and Durham have to be looking at this and shaking their head and going, this is crazy. This can't be, there's something going on here. Yeah, something's going on here. It's all part of the coup. That's exactly what it is. And Mifsud is lying. He did tell Papagolopoulos that, and someone put him in the game. Someone told him to do that. He's probably one of the Oconus lures. I think I think things are pretty much the way they look. I don't see 1,000 conspiracies behind every door or anything. I think generally there are conspiracies, no doubt. But in this particular case, as in most cases, things usually are pretty much what they look like. And this is what it looks like. Papagolopoulos is told to go to Link campus. He's got to meet this important person who's going to hook him up with a lot of people. Papagolopoulos finds out that Mifsud really is not connected to really anybody, and the only Russian he seems to know is this guy Timoviv, who's an academic, not involved in the government or intelligence or military or anything else. Mifsud runs that other little fake setup in London where he drops this information on Papagolopoulos, introduces this girl, and says that this is Putin's niece. So he tells another lie. Mifsud is a liar. And if he were clean and didn't have anything to hide, he would have come out publicly to clear his name. Instead, someone's hiding him to keep him quiet. Probably the CIA or the FBI or whoever put him in the game is keeping Mifsud quiet and well hidden. That's what all this looks like, and that's exactly what it is. So there's a lot of people lying here. This is very, very bad. When you look at that 302, it's clear this was not a serious investigation into this critical player, Mifsud. This was not a serious investigation into him. This was almost, it looked like they're trying to cover their ass. Like it's 7 months after the fact. Trump's been elected. He's now in office. They're realizing that they're in a lot of trouble. They now have to go and backtrack and try to make it look like that there was a real investigation and all this stuff was going on, so they had to just kind of go through the motions with Mifsud, and knowing good and well that he was part of the group, one of the Oconus lures. I certainly hope that Durham and Barr get to the bottom of this, and certainly at least clear the record. At least clear the record. From what was in the Mueller report and what was in the IG report and what Comey testified to under oath, that Mifsud was some kind of a Russian agent. No, he wasn't. He was some kind of a Western agent put into the game by somebody to drop this ticking time bomb on Papagolopoulos. That's what happened, and that's what we need to have confirmed by Mueller, by Durham and Barr in the very near future. That's what needs to happen. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.